Hi, my name is Ella Barberie, and for my senior project, I chose to paint. I chose painting for my senior project because for my whole life, art has been a big influence on my character. I grew up with a family that is very creative, and my parents always encouraged me to use my imagination. Once I started this project, I quickly realized that painting had the power to engage me fully into the picture I was making and take my mind off other things. There are many studies that show painting reduces stress, especially during senior year when times were very stressful. This took my mind off of it. My mentor for my senior project was Erin Gregory. She's a very well-known Impressionist artist in our area. I knew her through another friend of mine and knew that she had mentored a Columbus High student before. She taught us the skills of Impressionism over Zoom.
The style of paintings I focused on was Impressionism. Impressionism started in the late 1800s when French painters rebelled against traditional paintings. They were called Impressionists. The point of Impressionism was for artists to follow their own creative paths and use their own techniques. The paintings I just showed were all done with the Impressionist style.
For my project, I constructed 5 different paintings, including a landscape, a waterscape, a still life, a figure painting, and a portrait. I used Impressionist style on each of these paintings. I focused on Impressionist artists like Claude Monet to gather research on how Impressionist paintings were done.
My contract requirements were to make 5 different paintings, 3 of them being a 9 by 12 or larger and the other 2 18 by 24. For each painting, I had to show dimension and objects illustrated by using value change, overlapping, proportion, and color. I also had to use the composition rules foreground, middle ground, and background to give depth into my pieces.
I found it really interesting that Impressionism was more about the creative process of the painter rather than how realistic the painting actually looks.
The first Impressionist painting I completed was a landscape. This is my landscape painting I completed. I first used an undertone color of purple for my color ground. Color ground, also known as the background color, is the primary coat of paint that you layer paints over to make a completed piece. As you can see, there are still spots of purple in the background of this painting. In Impressionism, it is common for artists to leave spots of the color ground not covered up because it adds dimension to the painting. An Impressionism technique that I used was short and thick brushstrokes. For the background of the sky in my landscape, I used short brushstrokes of paint to capture the essence of the object rather than the subject's details. For the trees, I used a dark green color mixed with a bit of black. I then started layering the trees with different colors of green and yellow to get an accurate depiction of light in certain areas. I wanted to make the trees look like the sun was hitting them on one side and not the other. To do this, I mixed a yellow with a jade green and used short and quick strokes to make sure the trees look like the way they do. For the road, I started out with a tan color all across the bottom. I then started to layer different colors of greens, yellows, and tans. I used a light green for the shadows of trees and then put dark green and then finally layered black on top to get a full effect of a shadow.
The next Impressionism painting I worked on was my waterscape. This painting was a recreation of Claude Monet's water lilies.
The first thing I did to the painting was paint the top and the bottom portions of the canvas dark blue and the middle white, so the water in the middle was lighter than the bottom, where the green lilies were going to be. This painting took a lot of layering paints and mixing colors to get to the finished product. In this clip, I showed how I mixed yellow and green to start out the background of the lily pads and the swamp area in the corners. Here I start to bring the green down to the bottom and on the other side, but not as much as on the other side. I then start mixing in white to make the painting look more watery and blue. I'm blending out the colors with short brushstrokes. I then use red and dark blue at the bottom to make it darker. I'm mixing in white to give it a more water color and mixing in green. I then start painting white circles to where I'm going to put the lily pads. Then I layer the white with a blue paint and then a green. Then I start painting yellow and different colored flowers on the lily pads at the top. I then start to blend out the paintings to look more like water. I then add the lily pads at the bottom using a dark green blue. I layered the paint with more green. I then layer it with white to make the lily pads look like the sun is hitting them.
My third and final 9 by 12 painting was my still life.
This painting is a recreation of a still life painting by Jose Trujillo. I first started out with one color in the background and then layered colors until I had the shape of a pear in a bottle. I started out with the same color on the bottle and the pear and eventually layered the colors enough to where they looked different. I first started out with a color ground of a dark blue bottle and a green pear. In this clip, I'm trying to differentiate between the start of the pear and the start of the bottle. I was creating a shadow to have an accurate depiction of light in my photo, and the bottle was creating a shadow on the very edge of the pear. For this painting, for the color ground, I started with a dark tan at the bottom and a light tan at the top, and then I eventually layered colors to get the background. In this clip, it shows layering the green, blue, and white paints. This is showing an accurate depiction of light on the bottle. My short brush strokes emphasize the effects of light in this painting. I started with a light tan color on the background and then started to layer pink and orange colors all around the bottle. The reason I did the bottle first is that I can clean up the edges of the bottle with my layered paints in the background. For my fourth painting, I did a recreation of Claude Monet's Woman with a Parasol. It was my figure painting. For this painting, I started out with a traced version of what I was going to paint. This clip is me completing the color ground and making each part a different background color. I use light and earth tones or other muted tones in the sky because they will provide a natural base and reflect lots of light. I use darker tones on the woman because she is the center of the piece. These next few clips are showing how I completed the sky and layered many different colors over to make it look real. I used layers of colors, leaving gaps in the top layers to reveal the colors underneath. I layered the paints to where the clouds were whiter in the middle and faded out into the blue of the sky. The top of the sky was the darkest portion. This is the completed sky before I start the rest of the painting. After I painted the sky, I then went in and started layering paints over the woman. I started out with a light tan color all over the front of the dress and nude colors on her arms and face. I then went in with more colors to make the depth of her dress and started layering yellows and tans and greens to make the lighter parts and a dark gray and blue to make the darker parts to look like her dress was moving in the wind. I then went in with purple and white and started making the depth of her arm and more white around this area to make the depiction of light. I also used dry brushing, which is a technique, and made it on her face to where it looked like she had a scarf around her face. I finished off the painting by using a red and a tan to make the color of the grass and then mixing in different colors and mixing in dark green and dark blue to make the shadows of the woman. My final painting is an 18 by 24 portrait. I started off with painting the whole 18 by 24 canvas, the background color it is now. I then traced out the head how I wanted it to be and began painting. I started with the hair and painted it a dark purple but left a lot of gaps. I eventually filled those gaps with pink and orange and dark blue colors. I used yellow, orange, and red shades to show value change and color in the face. I used a mix of orange and yellows to make facial features present but not fully into detail. I did not go into detail because Impressionism is more about the creative process of an artist rather than a more realistic depiction. I then went to the body and started off with a red color and left the middle blank. And as I kept painting, I eventually filled it in with more orange colors on the outside and yellow on the inside, making it look like a button-down shirt. Painting was one of the best topics I could have chosen for myself because I realized that I genuinely love to paint. It may have created a hobby or even a stress reliever. All of my contract requirements I needed to complete this project were done, including making 5 paintings, 3 of them being the 9 by 12 and 2 of them being the 18 by 24, dimension objects, color ground, layering paints, and depiction of light. The skill I think I excelled most in was depiction of light. The more I painted the landscapes and the figures and all the other paintings, I realized how to change the colors of my paints to make the light come from any way I wanted. In all my paintings, I used deep shadows to contrast the background with the foreground and lighter areas to depict which way light was coming from. This made all my paintings look more realistic and bring the whole picture together. Light affects color, making it either darker or brighter. When I was painting each of these, I kept that in mind and made shades of light and dark to help with the depiction of light. To me, this is what made my paintings come together in the end. The goals I had set for myself in the beginning have definitely been exceeded. I did not have confidence in my painting ability, and I thought that my talent would not make great pieces.
I proved myself wrong and made sure I tried my hardest on all my paintings. This new skill that I have learned, I will definitely take with me for the rest of my life and hopefully keep painting. This project has taught me something I don't think I'll ever forget.